of where are really power and who's really having in power. Like it's a process that brings discussion between you and yourself if you're doing it alone, you and colleagues if you can do it with multiple people. That's always bring more, diversity. And that's what's interesting as well, because I think the strength in that tools that have been developed with UNDP is like we want to have people to not have power paralysis and try to get, because that's what sometimes what you get when you want to have like the full truth, the full information, every detail of every, like I'm not I'm not blaming it. Like I've done research that like I think sometimes you need to go in detail and nuance and political analysis can really give you to that step. But sometimes you get lost and you don't know where you want to act. So here the idea is to have a tool that is simple and bring discussion and put like consciousness on power and put discussion and word on power that can at the end lead you to think about strategy. And that's where we're going now. It's talking about the last step about strategy and action. So it's about once you have your full map in front of you, it's looking at the full map and thinking about, okay, what power dynamic I want to prioritize and think about more now, because that's something else, like we can really get lost in our effort and motivation if we want and try to tackle everything. So here's the invitation of the tool we're using is once you get a full picture, understanding of the context, making things more visible, you can also decide, okay, I want to address this specific power dynamic and you try to work on 2 or 3. And so that's the first step here in the strategy and action is to choose 1 or 2 power dynamic and trying to face the blockage and challenges and build on the opening and opportunities. So what we do here is a 2-step process in strategies and action. And the first one is visioning. So yeah, you can go ahead to the next one. Um, and so once you decide on a key power dynamic, the idea is to move toward the solution mindset. And also, again, if you work with group and you do this exercise with other stakeholders, it's quite good to have that step because quite often people can get a bit stuck in about how difficult it is. And thinking about power is overwhelming. But the idea is to really to find a windows of opportunity where we can act. And to try to move toward that solution mindset, the first step proposed in that power mapping step, sorry, I'm repeating step a lot, is to ask about vision. And so look at your power dynamic and think about what would it look like if this change, if that power dynamic go away, what like if it was resolved, what would be happening instead? What is a better version of this situation, without thinking maybe it's fully resolved, but what would be a better version of this situation feel like? And what become possible when this power dynamic is no longer a barrier or a challenge? And so again, like Maria said, like today it's still about explaining you the tool and the steps and everything. We're not going to do a full map together. That's the next 2 sessions. But because I quite like that step, we would like to invite you still to move towards smaller group and to have one of you propose one power dynamic they face in their work and think about those questions with that person thinking. So like the idea is like, and we're gonna type the question in the chat again, but the idea is like to move towards smaller group, having one person being like, oh, I'm happy to share a power dynamic I face, and like with all the member of the group trying to think about what it would look like if it wasn't here anymore, what would it allow you to do, and try to move towards that positive thinking. And in the exercise at the end, the last step, well, we'll did it in the same time, but the last step is to summarize it by a sentence and a picture, and you kind of have a collage of that positive vision. So this is the first step we propose here. And I'll let you, Maya, if possible, lead us to the
Sure.
group, and then we will come back in plenary, and with those of you that want to share where they got as a vision, we'll be happy also to listen to that kind of vision you got on that power dynamic.
Perfect, Luke. So we're going to have 6 minutes for this. And as Luke explained it, the idea is that you choose one person that share the dynamics and the other can ask the questions. like in a coaching session kind of way. So see you here in 6 minutes. We're gonna send you to breakout groups so you can have a more deep conversation about power. So everyone should having right now the breakout group. So if you must see something that a sign that send you to the breakout group. See you in a moment here. And let me know. Julius, do you have the message? Lahan, Modest, Asma, Laura? Great. See you in a moment. Great. See you, Modest. And Lahan. Great. Modest, are you? I see you're not in a room. Do you want me to send you to another room? Hello, Otogonsti. How are you? We are in breakout groups, so everyone is having a conversation about changing the power. Can you hear me? Also for you, Modest, let me know if you can hear me. And Otgongonsteg, also if you can hear me. We are almost bringing people back to the plenary. So you can stay here. I just want to double check if you can hear me, because I cannot hear you. Mm. Hi, Lou. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to the plenary. I hope you have a very powerful conversation. Nice, interesting. Great. Now that everyone is back, welcome back. I hope I didn't interrupt the conversation and you were able to have a nice chat. Sorry if someone was still talking, but don't worry, we will have more times in the second part of this session to deep in it. But I would like to invite one or two of the groups that want to share their answers in the plenary, just the reflections of what came out of this conversation. So if anyone wants to go first, you can have a couple of minutes, 3 minutes to share what was the highlights of your conversation. So I'm gonna open the floor to anyone who wants to share how was the conversation. You just can unmute yourself and the floor will be yours. So open to everyone who would like to start.
I can start. This is Asma. Okay. Can you hear me?
Perfectly. And maybe you can introduce
Okay,
where
تمام.
you're
First of all, you said I thought that you said we have 6 minutes to discuss, but I think it was much less, you know. So we didn't discuss everything. But the issue was that there is an international company that proposed by our colleague in the group. She mentioned that while she was working with FAO, they were international company make advertisements for junk food in the way of school. So children, when they go to school or leave the school, they pass by these advertisements, unhealthy food, of course. And there were an NGO investigating this issue, but they have no power to influence the international company because they have much more power. So we were at the middle of discussion because there were steps we should take to resolve this issue and to advocate for this. First of all, to collect data to make sure that about the locations of these advertisements and the tool used, I mean the means for if they're shop or just advertisements, you know, because there is a difference there, and also to discuss this with the parents. So we go to the parent club and to raise this issue with the parents to increase awareness, the local community awareness about this problem. And of course, this has health consequences. So we can check also to collect data from the nearest clinic, so we can talk to government to collect to collect information from the public health centers, you know. Then until we have a complete and comprehensive vision or idea about what is happening and what is the consequences of the problem, and if we show that people around they are upset, and if we you know I mean, the point here is, first of all, to have a comprehensive file documenting what is the problem. Then we can investigate about this international company, the owners, who is responsible about it, you know, about the staff working there, you know, and we can design the power map to try, to solve the issue and to advocate against, or at least to, to minimize the side effects and the causes of this problem. Over from my side.
Great, thank you, Asma, for sharing that. I just wanted to see how easy or not easy was to move to the possible power dynamics is not a barrier. Like how easy was to get in there, to see it like not a barrier, like a positive thing. In the case you are explaining, how easy was that to get with the team to put it in a positive way and take it out the idea as a barrier? If maybe you can share something, Asma.
We didn't discuss this issue, but it came to my mind that we need to understand the scope of work for the international company. Maybe they have other healthy food, so we can just, change the items of the advertisement from junk food to health items. And by the end, the international company is care about the profit and selling their items. So if the advertisements encourage those children to eat healthier food, so this would be a positive thing, like we promote for healthy food. So it will become, both of us, we are working to achieve the same objective, to enhance the nutrition of the children in the school and out the school. So if they have additional items, we can, get benefit from those items of the company, the products, I mean.
If I may add to that, so I was the one bringing the case, and I was actually thinking about an NGO that is working to empower youth to advocate for this issue. And so maybe that's also another way of thinking, okay, what is possible to rebalance a bit the power structure? Because in this case, youth is actually taking the center stage, a teenager especially, to campaign, and the NGO organized also some kind of fora where they invite representatives from the companies to talk directly with the youth. So there is some kind of, maybe what we spoke about this morning with the superpower. So like, okay, how can I put myself in others' shoes and understand what is the problem, why this is this is wrong, let's say. So yeah, maybe that's another possible change.
I'll give you an example of a possible one because that brings that to mind. The city next to where I live, the mayor and like people in decided to give up on like brand like public publicity space that they had, like like publicity space, to just put like cultural ad and like some education things in the city. So with all those bus stop and everything that were owned by the city, they like don't have ad anymore. They have like cultural events or like any like so in some places they're starting to like decide to like give up on like ad and the negative effects they had. But it was quite criticized by many because many were like, oh, this is just a small thing and it doesn't help. And I was like, so it's always difficult. Thanks for that example.
Great. Does anyone else want to share another case that you have that you discussed in the breakout group?
Sylvia and I did not get to the possible scenario of collapsing that power dynamics, but then it just occurred to me as I was listening to Laura's example that because I was my case was that I was sharing with Sylvia that I was part of the power dynamic when I worked with farmers. They respected a white-collar worker so much that I don't get to know what people want, their potential, their aspirations, and such. And then I was thinking just now, it's like I was brought back to an instant where I was at in a polytunnel, and I happened to not know about some of the veggies that the farmer I was working with was growing. And then all of a sudden, she felt empowered, and she started teasing me that, you're supposed to know this. Why not? And then there was just friendly banter, and it made me uncomfortable. So I'm like, okay. It occurred to me that if that power dynamics is leveled, I need to be prepared to deal with a bit of discomfort, just culturally and all that. And so I just wanted to share that because a lot of the times the change makers are part of the power dynamics as well. Yeah.
There is something very, very interesting on this the reflection, and is also what is our role and our power within us, and the perspective. So where you just say the reflection on understanding, okay, where I'm standing and what is my powerhouse playing a role in that. That is very important, especially if we have a badge or a name or an organization we're representing. So part of also of the exercise, and we did it also with the team in Peru. We did this same power mapping. Well, they also did it in Indonesia. We can share more information because I see someone is from Indonesia also here, and in Malaysia as well. And when we did this, one of the things that we were realizing with the team, it was the UNDP team in Peru, is how we also are influencing with our power the decisions and the things. So that's the first thing, to understand and to be aware of that power that we also have in order to influence, and to be aware of that, or how they express. And then that's nice that you mentioned that. And I would like to give Lou the voice so she can continue walking us through to the strategy, because we're going to talk more about that, especially in the last part of the session where we're going to talk about facilitation. It's going to be a very general, but we're going to talk about power and facilitation in order to go a little bit more in deep in our roles when we are the ones who's facilitating this process. So thank you very much. Very rich in conversation. And Lou, I'm going to go back to you, conscious of time, so we can continue the steps that are following.
And I have a similar example, Kim, sorry, but I will keep it for the facilitation at the end, yes. So during the first session, every time we presented the step, we presented you a power mapping tool we use in the past, well, like we did in the past around a Colombian case study. So here was just like to give ideas, but I think we give lively example, and that was fine as well. But, for people, when you go back to the slide, you can have other example of what visioning could look like. So on that example of Colombia, for example, if conflict over land ownership doesn't exist anymore, what would it be instead, And land titles are held by those who work the land, not by those who lobby the hardest, would be something that can come out, as a key sentence. Or the land tells a story of fairness, not fear, if you want to put it more in a storytelling format. And then the idea is to move from that nice vision, but that kind of change your mindset. And this is really important as well, because you've seen in the group, like sometimes we enter the problem, we dive in, but then we have a hard time to be like, okay, but now what can we do? And so the power mapping tool we propose is really inviting the group working on with that tool to think about, where can I have an effect? Where can I have an influence? What can I do to have an influence on that? And so in those visioning exercise where you try to think about, if he wasn't here anymore, what could be instead? And I'm gonna, like, Kim's example is a nice example about like getting ready of that kind of humility, and knowing that if it changed, then I kind of lose some of my power too as an expert. And but what else do you gain from that? And you can prepare yourself in a way so where you can have an influence. And I think those young people like Laura, like buy back, is an amazing example as well. What they do is they buy publicity space, and they put that, like their messages, and then say that it had been by people that want different food, different thing, and it's a quite strong message from the youth. And they kind of felt like, yeah, they find a way to have influence on something that seems quite big at first, but they did find a way to have influence. So once you did the vision exercise, the idea is like in those power asymmetries, that the power hotspot that you pick, to think about where you can have an influence, and identify then from where you can have an influence, strategy and that action that can be take to address that power challenge, and build on the power opportunity by your team and by other actors. And here we will show you the table just after, but we divided it between visible, hidden, and invisible power, because like this is a way also to think about which layer, where can I act, how can I act. So visible power is quite often about policy, and yeah, you can move to the next one, like so making and enforcing the rules. So it's acting on policy, and here's the example will be of the city I told you about, for example, where they don't use anymore like public space to make publicity. And so if you think about that, where could I act on that? What could I do? What could others do? Hidden is what happened behind the scene, more normally hidden, like lobbying and everything. So you can think about it again. Do I have an influence on that? And invisible power is about norm, narrative, values, and belief. And I know more and more organizations are working on narrative as well, you know. So how can I have an influence on that? What could be my place into that, and what can others do? So here's that the last step we do in the mapping is really to move toward what can I have an influence on, and what's a strategy I and my team can do and other actor could do. Because after the break, we're going to present you again a vision of power where we share the responsibility of changing power again, because if not, like it seems overwhelming and a big thing. So there's a lot about strategy around networking and trying to see where we fit in those power strategies. But that's the last practical step we take when we do the power mapping. And Maria was more present in the session with the country, but I worked on it after. And quite often what can appear here is like, okay, we do a lot maybe on visible power, but we don't do enough on the invisible power, or we could move doing more on hidden power, or, oh, we know that those other people are already doing that with them. How can we support them? And this is the kind of like small windows of opportunity that appear through those mapping. And I shared that in the first session, I think, but just to like finish on that positive note before the break, it's like what I find really amazing by using those kind of steps and really taking the time to think about power is that each time we kind of find strategy or small step we would like to take to change things. And I can give you one in participatory process. We talked about the example of capacity to listen and those big, powerful players, you know. And in my case, like quite often what they do is they use a strategy of the empty chair, we call it, so they don't come to the participatory process because they have power to lose. So their, way of doing it is like not being here. And it's really difficult when you like have those kind of bottom up participatory process that happen where, farmers can decide they want to do things differently, and then the powerful player don't come, then you don't really know what would be the change. I mean, you build empowerment and community, and this is good, but how to like move towards that next step? And for example, with the team we're working with, we were like, we should, how you call it? We should see more who's coming, who's not coming, because quite often we don't talk about the absent. So if you read a report on participatory process or research, we talk about who's here, we don't talk about the absent. And that could be just a fact. We invite them 3 times and they didn't come, but it should be somewhere like written, like kind of a transparency report on those kind of power, like kind of like a dimension. And so we decided in future project to kind of keep, like we always keep track of that internally, but more transparently and externally. And so that's, for example, a small type I quite like that we took from one of those power mapping. So yeah, thanks for that. And I see Laura have her hands up, so.
Yes, sorry. Very quickly, because what you said about the narrative, I kind of connected with what Kim Sor said earlier about, okay, what is my own role and my own resistance? And actually, I think I'm seeing it now in our own division, where we have the managers really trying to make a change into narratives and investing a lot into learning spaces, into communication, dissemination of what are the invisible, let's say, changes. And then there is a resistance even within the division to stick to, okay, why don't we just stick to influencing policies, influencing like the visible structure? So why are we really like doing this kind of philosophical almost work on on the hidden parts. And so it's I think it's a bit difficult sometimes even for us to change our patterns. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah. My superpower I was about talking to beyond human voices, because I realize my vision of nature is really, really anchored in me in a Western way. Like I realize how deeply. So we talked about having a different vision of nature and changing the narrative, but I know even myself how hard it is to really connect to those other cultures that see it differently, because I've never been like educated that way, never been in a system that works that way. So I can read about it, I can picture it, but really to embody what it would feel to have like this different vision of nature, for me, it's a resistance. I know I have like really strong resistance that I still have and want to work on. But, and so it is like power dynamic are also embedded in us in a way, and there is those systematic structures that drive who we are and how we perceive the world. And a big part of working with power is working on that as well.
Great. So I will invite everyone so we can work on those thoughts while we have a stretch and a coffee or a tea. So please don't leave soon. Just turn off your cameras and unmute yourself. And see you in 5 minutes. That means time 7 at 7 minutes past the time you're in your country. Okay. See you in a moment. See you in 5 minutes. And thank you very much for the discussion. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are back in the power and food transformation. So if you are back now, we invite you to turn off your camera. Let us know that you're here. Great. Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome
Hi.
back.
Thank you.
So, Modest, you raised your hand before we went to the break. So I would like to give you
Actually,
your...
it was not a question.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. So let's open with that, Modest. Over to you.
I mean, it was not a question. It was just to like notify that you are going to the break.
Sorry, say it again, because I didn't understand.
I said it was not a question.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
great. Oh. Lou, over to you so we can close up this part of the session of the strategies. You want me to share now?
Sure. Yeah. But I think it's you're gonna present the next part, but go ahead. Yes, I was just to check.
Sure. Do you want to add something else that maybe Lou?
For on that part, no, it was like I think like I say, it's the last step of the power mapping, but it's the first step of the rest as well. You know, kind of like at that last step, you can start strategy and action, and then that's when hopefully you can get out of sometime of that immobilization we feel in face of power and starting to like find ways and windows of opportunity to act. So and I think Marianne, next you're going to talk about how to put that in, even like go back to broadening the context, because I think again, I emphasize that in that tool, we are not trying to get to the truth. We're not trying to get to the best full picture, all information in. It's kind of something you can use as an individual or as a team to move forward. And that means like, what can I do? What can we do? You know, and it might not be, you know, like like last time we had someone working on health and was saying that like in the actor mapping we shared, she was like, where are the health actors, you know, like, and they're super, like there should be health actor around that. And probably in the case of Colombia, those people were not around the table when they did the power mapping. So you do always get some side, you know, like some perspectives that are missing maybe in your power mapping. But the idea is to, move and try to advance and try to go toward the strategies without having that fear and that feeling of like, I don't know enough to do something. And then what Maria's going to present now is kind of going back to that broader context and integrating again a broader context of what can be done around power.
Perfect. Thank you, Lou. And so if we move, and I like to introduce this because there are two words that I like a lot, and it's ecosystem. And that's because we are talking about food and we're talking about nature. Ecosystem fits very well to this concept of strategies. So this mind frame of thinking about how to navigate those strategies, it allows us to put like a kind of an order in the mind, and is mimicking a little bit of what nature does as well. Nature connects everything. The fungus has a purpose, the tree, the water, the nutrients, everyone works in a nice way. So when we move from the mapping and we want to bring like this ecosystem or integrated view, this is a tool that can help us to understand those different elements or factors that are in the power mapping. So in order to understand this and to go from power science in terms of moving systems to transformative power, that was what we talked in the first session. One of the first things that we need to understand, and has been mentioned here in a way, is that no one alone can do it. And that's the fact that a tree can also survive alone in the forest. The same thing happens to the power dynamics. So when we are aware of that in terms of what it needs to be to change food systems in terms of the realities of the power, the understanding which actors are using which strategies and what capabilities are in the system, or even what capabilities do we have or we lack, it is very important. In that sense, the pursue or the look is to put together formally or informally, and that's essentially important, different actors' strategies to connect the dots. So when we talk about the ecosystem of strategies, we are talking about a focus on where we can make a difference. So where we really are adding the value, where we should put the energy, and also identify where we can expand into new areas. So understanding our capacities, but also seeing, okay, can I move this? Is it strategic? Who is doing this? Who is not doing that? And of course, be aware of who can complement the work others are doing. So also part of this workshop is that part of the creating this conversation, and as part of our work on the UNDP is to connect dots. So every one of you, each one of you has a goal in terms of food transformation. It can be in Indonesia, in Kenya, in India, in Italia, but we are connected. So the first thing I want to invite you here, and we will talk more further about this in the when we do the power mapping, is also to connect process and knowledge and information. This is also why these processes are very valued. So if we go in deep in this ecosystem of strategies, and this is something that is easy to read and very colorful in terms to bring the information, is that when we talk about the ecosystem of strategies, we're talking about 7 components, 7 elements. It can be more, on the sake of what we have done, Lou and Jetro, and the working we have done with the countries. We mentioned these 7, but of course you can add more, and you're welcome to any suggestion, because of course this is a working process. But in terms to what we've seen so far, and also Lou can elaborate more on this, is that when we make sense of what is there, and we try to see the ecosystem in terms of what is needed to shape those power dynamics and shape those food systems, we are contributing from one of these. So we might be in a common purpose, or how we leverage a collective efforts to a greater impact. We can be on one of these. So what I wanted to invite you is to see what is inside of each one of these. So this colorful flower, it has different points of where do you stand up in terms of where do you put in your energy. So in the center, in color green, is reimagine, because it's one of the, I will say, that has a lot of impact in terms of the results. And we're talking about visions and values. So when we're talking about strategies that are connected with reimagine, we're thinking about how we envision that future in base of the sharing values, the visions that we have, either in an organization, in a community, or in a given space. It's a very powerful initiative because it tells us to ourselves first, what is our vision? So what Lou was mentioning before, okay, what do I think about food transformation? I think it's possible, how it is possible, what is my vision? Because that's gonna be part of, what is the vision of the team? What you were saying, Laura, like maybe in the team, everyone has a different perspective of how those visions are valued. And that's okay, but put it over the table and reimagine, and then take it to the stakeholders. What are their visions and values, and how this can be reimagined? The second is organize and educate. And when we are talking about organize and educate, we are talking about the capacities that the champions, we can call it that way, or leaders in the communities, in institutions, and the political support are being given. So we're talking about the outreach, the building these capacities in order to organize and educate in different ways that generates a change. The third one is reform and engage. And this is in terms of laws, of policies, And so a lot of you are mentioning that in terms of for example, the banning of food that is harming the kids, and then how you're engaging in policy making, in lobby, in application and implementation of these, influencing key decision makers in terms of reform and engage with these actors. The third one, network and connection, and this is how we expand the dynamics of power in terms of building relationships. So there is an example from my colleagues from Brazil that we are working with cattle there, and they were trying to reach one of the government's actors that they needed to be present in one of the sessions. And they couldn't reach him, and I couldn't reach him. And one of them said, "Oh, don't worry, I meet up in the parking lot. I already spoke with him, and he's going to go in the meeting." So there are different spaces of how to network and connection, formally or informally. But there's also a way to influence on these relationships and networks, and that's also a way to shift the power. And this is resist and expose. And I think also there in this group, there is a very interesting group of people that are doing this in terms of support, the evidence, the knowledge on sustainable agriculture. Kim Sor, maybe you mentioned something that you're doing on agricultural system. So here is how you show up. For example, how you show up that a sustainable farm using agrosystem really works and can show that this is working by showcasing the process. And this also is connected with activists, with exposing knowledge, and bringing this real scenario of how you can acknowledge and show this. And create and claim, and this is very related with how we transform systems, like and it is more connected to, sorry, Kim, so what you were saying here is more your example of showing up the real case of how it's doing. In Colombia, for example, there is a big movement of agroecology. They're doing these little sustainable farms. They are connecting different farmers and expanding in the territory so people can go there and see actually how it's working, and showcasing how the process of changing ways of for example, commerce with commodities of food can work. And last one is narrate and communication. So how to change challenging dominant narratives, communicating. So what you were saying about the publicity in terms of the food industry, and how we are this is very linked to the invisible power, the things that are there that are related with the narratives of power, social media, how to think different. So now there is actually in the UNDP as well, and we just share, our colleague Josie just shared something in the chat. Thank you about that, about narratives and how to shape those thinkings in terms of of the invisible power. So this is like a snapshot, the ecosystem strategy, the flower that connect different ideas and ways of how we concentrate strategies. So I would like to move to something, and I would love to hear it. Where are you in terms of these examples that can leave us? So I'm gonna skip this. I'm gonna leave it for you in terms of sense making. These questions can also help you when you're facilitating a session with your team or with other stakeholders to guide the process and to guide the sense making of the information we mentioned before. What companies do you think we are using more, less, why? And what companies do you think we should be using more or less? For example, where are your strategies? So I'm gonna propose a challenge here, and the challenge is, here is the flower, but she's not open as well. So the challenge that I want to propose to everyone is, if you want to share one real case, where are you implementing in your organization and a strategy of create or claim, narrative or communication, reform and engage. The idea is to create a flower and see what it is there and what is not, just to make a sense of, we as a group, what are we doing? So I would like to open the floor and you can decide, okay, I want to present my case and I want to take, because I think my case, and let me go out from this presentation mode, sorry, is connected to create on share value or sorry, with reimagine or resist, you can name it. So let me go back to share again. So we can say here, and then we can move it over here to see what is there. So I'm gonna open the floor to everyone and see who wants to start. Where do you see a very a specific case of what you're doing? And you say, okay, my case is more in narrative, resist, network, organize, reform, or reimagine. So the floor is yours, and I would love to hear if you have any case that you want to share. So, welcome. Who wants to go with an example? There's no good about it. It's just examples that you can share with us. And I'm gonna go back so you can have like a, actually I'm gonna share these. There are examples as well, so you can have a reference. I'm also gonna share this information with you. Here we have the different ecosystem, but there are examples in terms of that. So I'm just gonna leave it here so you can have an idea of that. And yes, who would like to share where are your strategies are? Are your strategies in narrative, in resistance, in reimagine? Yeah, open the floor. You're very shy now in this. Is that?
I can start if you want. Like, I can give one example, maybe that will like get people to be less
That would be great,
shy.
Luke. Go ahead.
So in Reform and Engage, I worked in NGOs that work on biodiversity for a long time, and they have created those land tenure. So if you own land, if you own wide land, you can decide that you put kind of like a asterisk at the end of your land tenure contracts. Let's say, I don't know the name in English to say it properly, where you say this land should not be used for, and you say the purpose for which it should not be used for a number of years. So even when you sell it, the way you sell it, keep that kind of biodiversity obligation. It's around biodiversity, but keep that biodiversity obligation, and we'll keep it for 30 years or 40 years. And it's something new that they created, that French government created maybe now 10 years ago, because time goes quickly. But we, like, I think it was it's quite a powerful reform and engage things. And so the idea was then to, because the strategy ecosystem is like blocks, but of course you move between blocks. But part of our action were like to actually engage with the government to strengthen that policies and make sure, like, that they communicate around it, and that it's not just something they do and and keep it in the drawer and look like they done their deed. So that was part of that, was like really to communicate and get people in the policy system to know that reform, and then move also to organize and educate, because we also did some things with farmers and everything for them to know that reform. So that's one example of changing, changing a policy to have long-term engagement toward biodiversity on agricultural land. Asma, have our hands up. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, I will give you an example. Actually, it's a very strong example from the context I came from Gaza, Palestine, that in one of our projects, we wanted to establish the water user association. I'm sure the concept of water user association is familiar for many of you. It's an association just for irrigation water users. So according to the Palestinian law in Gaza, because of the division, we have a law for West Bank and another law for Gaza, Palestine. So in Gaza, there is no law for establishing water user association, but in West Bank, the law is effective. So I think the most three tools we used to establish the first water user association in Garda was reform, engage, and organize, educate, and also using network and connect. How is that? Because first of all, we started with educate farmers and community leaders about the importance of establishing and having water user association for agricultural purposes. The other thing is also we increased awareness about the importance of having women in the board of directors. And we kicked off a very large campaign in the targeted area. And by the end, we have a common understanding with the localities about the importance of having such association. The other thing that we started together in partnership with the Ministry of Agriculture and with the active agriculture organizations in the area. So we make like a looking and to start advocate about how we can change the law and exceptionally add some changes to establish such association. Also, we have in the network and connect, I think it's much closer to the cluster work. So we get support from food security cluster in Gaza and in Palestine as well. So we support, we seek support from cluster partners to advocate, and by the end, after 2 years of advocating to establish, we succeeded to establish the first water user association in Gaza, and it was very effective. And we had 3 women in the board of directors within the election. You know, it's just like an election result. But also we put in the internal system of the association that there is a quota for women, 3 out of, I think it was 12 seats. So without using the quota, we already have 3 women as a result of the election. And after that, we generalized and present the process that we went through to the cluster members. And within just 6 months, after establishing the first water user association, we had additional 2 water user associations in different localities among Gaza Strip established as well. So maybe the efforts that were done that time was not organized in the process or the methodology of using the power and power mapping, but actually this is the steps that we went through for more than 2 years. Over.
Well, Asma, thank you very much for sharing that. I was a little bit broken, but it's still, I think, I don't know if it was my connection, but we hear you. And I recall from your example that 2 ecosystem, two elements of the ecosystem, resist and expose, and reform and engage. And network and connect. I bring back those 2 from your example. So thank you very much, Asma, and let me know if that's okay.
Yeah,
Great.
but I think also organize and educate, because that I think was the first step that we started to educate public about and increase their awareness about the establishing of such association.
Great. Thank you, Asma. That was very integrated perspective. Nice. Anyone has one in create and claim or narrative and communication or imagine that want to share? Any example of one of these that you would like to, that you're doing right now in your organization? Maybe from the cases that you just mentioned.
Currently, no, because most of the work in Gaza Strip is suspended because of the war, the ongoing war there. But one of the things that we are working on it is to change the developmental project to be emergency interventions, and this is, you know, something is hard to do for many projects because we already went through steps in the project, but This is something hard to do, but we are working on it to convince donors with the new redesign of the project to be humanitarian emergency response rather than developmental project.
Sure. Thank you, Asma. Nice. Is there anyone else that has a case that create and claim? Remember that when we're talking about create and claim, we're talking about the alternative ways to transform food system. For example, the real cases that are showing that. When we talk about narratives and communication, we talk about the invisible power, social media, thinking differently, what is being done in that, if anyone has a case in that. And when we talk about imagine the change is the invisible power, or how we are changing those narratives and making aware of that. It's okay if I know some of you have it. Sylvia, see you unmute yourself.
Yes, sorry, I was looking for the button to raise the hand and I couldn't find it. So
But your hand worked very well.
I just jumped in. So yes, I'm working at the IUCN Food and Agricultural Systems. So we are working at global level mainly, but also collaborating very closely with regional and national colleagues. So a lot of the work we do, it's about, also creating a different narrative, let's say, and trying to show solutions. So this is done through, just general communication. We have actually recently, the team is very new, so we are still, building the foundations and looking how we can further evolve our work. But for example, we have now created a social media channel, so that can be one channel to work on this narrative objective. But also what we do is very much also in big international events where we create space for dialogue processes, where we try to really give the space, give the floor to alternative voices that can bring ideas of different solutions, and then they can present themselves also as expert, valuable voices that should be included in the dialogue to find solutions for a challenge that is common. So there is also a part of work that is done on the background on building the capacities of those most vulnerable people to actually be able to participate in an impactful way in these international discussions. So it's not just providing the opportunity to be there or to create events for them to speak, but it's also working with them to build the capacity. So that's one element. And then similarly also we are working with regional and national offices to really try to introduce this more and more also at more local level and in more targeted discussions as well.
Great. Thank you, Sylvia, for sharing. And all these cases, remember this session is being recorded, so you can go back to listen what our colleagues are sharing, because I think it's a very powerful. And we also invite you to connect each other, to look, for example, in Sylvia and Asmand examples, how they're doing. If you want to bring that to your country and your project, networking, that's also a way to do it. So I just want to elaborate on create and claim and reimagine. I'm just going to go to here and just bring the example of the reimagine. And let me put this in a big screen so we can see this difference. So when we talk about an example, we're talking about wisdoms, values built on sense of purpose and ability to clearly articulate the change we have to achieve. So I would like to bring over the table something that is happening in the UNDP. In the UNDP, we have this called the Conscious Alliance, the Food System Conscious Alliance. And what is been doing that is bringing different perspectives, from indigenous perspectives on how to transform food systems, and bringing different visions and bringing another values in a very practical way, and hoping to achieve different ways to address the change and imagine different things. But here, and I think it's very powerful, their imagine, is because the ideas are created in the mind. The ideas are created in our souls, in our minds, and they brought alive with our actions. So reimagine is very powerful in that sense. And create and claim, that was something also was missing in our ecosystem. The example I give you about Colombia, of this little village that they are creating, and nearby the place I live in a coffee farm, and then next to the coffee farm there is a group of association of women that what we are doing is to create a different way of harvesting coffee, and also integrate it with we call it short chains of food production. So each one is producing something different, and we are selling the super plus in the towns, and the coffee is giving a fluid of economy. So that's organizing a different dynamic and creating and organizing a different way. So those are examples, and thank you very much. You're gonna have this. Thank you for sharing this. And there's much to share in here. So I'm gonna bring these two over here and going to the next step. So I'm gonna close here the ecosystem of strategies, and reminding, and one of the two things I want to conclude this part is the importance on understanding, for example, in the exercise we did, what are we doing? So are we, in which of these topics, the strategies we are leading are, and who is doing the other ones, for example, because in order to have a healthy ecosystem, the best way will be, in this case, for example, what we're showing is that we can have the whole flower complete. But I'm sure that in the case of Assam and everyone that is here, there's people that is also doing reimagine. Asma, for example, who is doing as a reimagine and create a claim in your project, or Sylvia, who is doing receipts and expose or narratives in your process. And this applied for everyone is here. Agus, who is doing that in Indonesia as well, in terms of the projects, or Inotsat, yeah. And so for everyone, it's important in this part of this mapping is to understand where we're putting the energy, where we can expand. For example, in the case you were explaining, Sylvia, okay, you are more in these narratives and communication. Maybe there's a stretch, a place where you can go also to network and connect, and there's an opportunity because you can have a level of influence because you already did so much on narrative and communication that your power strategy can shift a little bit and expand through the process to network and connect, because it's the moment. So one of the things this map allows us is to understand us from an organization perspective, what are we doing as a strategy, where we can expand our work, and where we need to connect with someone else in terms of what is lacking in this flower. Because if we want to have, from a power perspective, a position, a greater impact, the ecosystem needs to be balanced, the tree needs the fungus, needs the water, needs so it will be better, but doesn't mean we have to do it everything. We are not superpowered. We have a lot of powers, but we are not a wonderful woman, a wonderful Superman. So in terms of that, understanding with who we have to connect. Okay, so those are the conclusions of this. I'm gonna finish here. Laura, I'm gonna give you voice, and then I'm gonna give it to Lou so we can talk about facilitation, so we can use the time that we have. So Laura, over to you.
Yeah, sorry to be quick. I'm just wondering if the reimagine vision values is kind of a step before we take some of the other strategies, because I don't know, I'm thinking about some work we did recently with an office in the Pacific about re-envisioning, let's say, how to talk about non-communicable diseases and change the narrative from, okay, what is the value of imported food versus local, traditional, healthier options. But then I think the work we do on the visioning then to be applied in practice and translate into actions need more steps. So maybe more of the other 6 strategies you listed there. So I'm not sure if more of them need to be applied at the same time. I'm just trying to understand how can we move from vision to concrete actions, let's say. Thank you.
Sure. Lou, do you like to respond that, or you want me to go on that?
Go. Yeah, sorry, I was like already the power and facilitation mode, so go ahead for that question.
Yeah. So Lou does, sorry, Laura does that the interesting question in sense of categorize, and I can see how your brain works in terms to organize information and what goes one first, and that's very clever and very interesting. And I have to say, like, two things of what your question about, okay, how to get to imagine the change, to reimagine, if I understand well the question. And the first thing is that there's no one step, 1, 2, 3. It's not that, like, okay, if I am in imagine the change, and then I go to organize and educate, then I go to reform, because it depends also on the aim of your organization or where you are, okay? Because each organization or person, they have a different focus or perspective. But what is the theory of change behind that? That would be one thing. So if my theory of change as an organization is that I want to concentrate and create and claim, yeah, but that theory change is connecting with something else. What is that create and connect, for example, is connected? What is the purpose? And that what is the theory of change that is behind that, yeah? And it's valid because I'm focusing on one strategy. But when we go to reimagine and we said it is important, is because it's one of the categories of strategies that also are important. So you can have, for example, an example in the case of asthma, she was explaining that she has different strategies because the aim of his organization is connected with all those levels, and also the context she has requires that she work on that. So the first thing I will say here is that it's important to go back to understand what is the theory of change your organization has in terms of the power shifting. But also this tool can help you mapping that and to understand, okay, is this clear for me as a professional developing in these arenas of power? And second, how clear is for my organization, where do we have to expand the strategies to achieve that goal of that change we want to claim? But saying this, what I'm saying is that there is no good or bad. But indeed, it is important to be aware of what we are doing and we are not, in order to achieve the change, and who else is doing it. Because I'm sure, Laura, that in your context and also in the context of everyone that is in here, there's people that have different access, or they are tackling any of these 7 categories in different ways. So the important is, okay, to connect and understand. For example, if there is another organization that is bringing awareness about food eating habits or the food production, okay, who is doing that and what is the imagination and how they do it, and connect in the different conversations. So I will say that, but that's a very interesting, and I'm very eager to do the power mapping with you guys, everyone, and we're gonna talk about that, because that's when we put these concepts in real things. So we're gonna do it in the following 2 sessions, and we're gonna give it more like earthly reality. So we're gonna choose some of the cases. So we're gonna talk about that and bring it to your real cases in the following sessions. So Laura, did I help you with your? I hope I help you with your question. Perfect. So I'm gonna go over to Lou. So we go into facilitation, and what is there in terms of facilitation? This is gonna be a general perspective of a topic. Lou, over to you.
It was just like we keep doing those movement of like we're enlarging and now we like going back to individual. But I think it's really important to realize all these different level in which we can experiment power. And so power can express at really different stage in your projects, and it can happen, you know, like in the design phase. So you talked about inclusivity is quite often. We talked about those is when we're designing a project. It can happen in the facilitation. So when you're implementing, when you're up like being like with people and thinking about with the people, like when you're directly interacting with them, what power is expressing there? Are there any power with alliances between people? So, you know, again, back to the framework we give at the beginning, it's kind of giving you a way to analyze in what's happening, but it can also happen in the follow-up. And many of the cases I give you as example, we use it like we use a power lens analysis at the end of the project. And we hope to be able to like gain like more capacity and strength to do it before and during, but quite often that's how you start, you know, like start building your capacities, like looking at project after and trying to learn from that. And just those reflect, so it's about embedding reflecting practice through the process on power. And here what I'm going to say, like quickly present is how can you do that in terms of facilitation. And you can do it at the first person, second person, or third person. So reflective practice, you can apply them on yourself. And I think, Kim Sor, your example was a really good one on first person, like kind of reflective practice is like, okay, what is my power? And you can use a flower of privilege, you know, like trying to realize in terms of discrimination, where you at, you know, there is, you can look online for that. It goes to all those big structural discrimination, existing discrimination, and you can try to see where I am. I am more educated than other a woman, a man. I am like fully able, or you know, have some visible disability, invisible disability, but and making you aware of where you at, you know, on that, for example, is one exercise you can do, and that will build your strengths in being able to reflect on power and what's happening around you. You can do it second person, so as a team, you know, as a team as well, you can reflect on your internal power dynamic. And so as a team, for example, in UNDP, we did use the strategy we show you, the strategy ecosystem we show you, and we reflect on where we were, like, you know, action. So as a team, we don't do the same action, but we try to put like a dot on where we were, but we also put a dot on where we would like to be. And I thought it was really nice to do it as a team, to realize, like, you know, we're starting to work on power. We want to do more on power, and maybe like UNDP, because of his role and neutrality, do a lot of reform and engage. But we could see that in the team, and, you know, in the state of the world right now, some of them were like quite keen to go more into resist and expose as well, you know, and so you can reflect on your own power position, what you want to do with power, how do you want to act on power as a team. And here there is different exercise for that. And then you can do the third person, and then it's about facilitating reflection of power with the group you're working with. Here, for example, me more and more when I facilitate with group, I try to bring those kind of power dimension from people by asking them, not as individual, but maybe, you know, in a group, like as a woman, how do you feel? Or as a farmer, how do you feel? And kind of bringing those dimension of power out a bit more, or you have to have like that safe space, and, you know, we can talk about safe, but when you have that safe space, sometimes you can bring out those invisible power dynamics that are happening in the room in a bit more in an open way, by inviting people to think from that perspective, instead of maybe just as Lou, you know, but maybe as a well-educated person, how do I think? And that's, you know, Kim Saw, your example was quite good for that. And so, yeah, you can do that at those three level, and it really can make a difference, because I just want to go like with the example Kim Saw you gave. I have an example where I facilitated a workshop in Mexico where they quite used to have external people coming in and proposing action, you know, and they say yes or no. But here the idea was really to co-construct with them like an agreement on how to deal with jaguar attacks that was on biodiversity and on management of jaguar. But it was really hard for them, and it was with veterinary team. It was a One Health approach kind of thing. It was really hard for them to engage. And every time I will ask them a question, the vet from my team will answer the question, because of that kind of expertise and how they're used to have process more like that, of presenting their knowledge, people agree, disagree, and everything. So it was even in my team that I kind of got struggled a bit to get people answer, because they're also used to that. So we had to do that kind of teamwork between workshop to like reassess, restart, and re-put the intention, because they had the intention of co-constructing as well, is part of, you know what, because they're used to that, and they were scared of where there were too much silence in the room, you know, because silence is scary. So they will answer because people don't answer. I was like, no, let's try, if we give more time for them to answer what happened, can we get to that co-constructing stage. And here are example of things you can do at the different level and at the different stage. And really, it's the more you're doing it, reflecting practice is quite often, like I say, we start by reflecting after that first step, you know, like questioning power after a project is finished. Then I think we get better to being able to implement it in the design and think about power in the design. But for me, the final goal is when we are able to do it like in action, and realizing when it happened in action, how you want to change and adapt how you're acting on that. And this is different example of way of doing it. And we just wanted to go back to that kind of individual perspective, because working on power is not like I don't think you can work on power without starting looking at your own power in your team and how it interact in your group already before like working with like power outside of that.
Great. Thank you, Lou. And that was in a nutshell, a general project. There's more on facilitation and power, but of course we can develop more this in deep and we're gonna share more information so you can have more access to this information. And how is that? Remember this presentation we're gonna share, so all this information is gonna be accessible for you. So the next steps is the session 3 and 4. So session 3 and 4, we are going to get our hands dirty. We're going to plan some maps. So the idea is that on the 21st, that is next week, we're going to start developing our own mapping using the information we just reviewed on the session 1 and session 2. And in session 4, that is the last one, we're going to continue with level 3 and level 4. Just to let you know, due to some issues with our facilitators and the health issues, we have to move the session. It was initially for the 28th of May. It was moved to the 23rd of May, same time, same hour. I'm sorry about that, but the idea is to be able to finish the power mapping also not very far away, because otherwise we'll be in June and to continue. But also, but it's going to be nice because it's going to be close in order to have the fresh mind and to do the first level 1 and 2 and then level 3 and 4. So in that in mind, and I apologize again for that, I hope we can accommodate it so we can continue and finish the power mapping. We have some questions and we want to know who will participate in both sessions. And you can start thinking, and also if you would like to present a real case study. So what is going to happen is in the session 3 and 4, what we're going to do is those people that present and say, I want to do the power mapping on my case. They're going to be the leaders, and they're going to be, of course, we're going to make some breakout groups. If other people just want to join and learn from other cases, welcome, because we are going to make some groups and make some collective thinking in here. So what I'm going to invite you right now, if you can go into the chat and say, okay, I would like to present my real case study, and I can join the sessions. And if you can share, write it up, your name, of course, and then what kind of case study you want to do the mapping. So something that is food related topic. So it can be a commodity. I don't know, I'm working on coffee, cacao, cashew, whatever. Or it's organizational. I want to do it on the level of my organization and see the power analysis on that. Thematic on power shipping, then the food habits that you mentioned. Or I want to do it regional. Yeah, should choose a pick. And then what we're going to do is to create the groups in the next session. So I would like to know if there's people that are interested in do it. And then you can write it up, please, in the chat. I see, Kimor, you were sharing something very nice. Thank you, Kimor. Kim, sorry for that. And then, yes, I would like to know who wants to propose some topics. Also, we are going to organize the teams in the next one. And yeah, you can write it out here in the chat. So open the floor. Also, you can comment if you say, okay, I would like to have this. I know we have here in here very nice cases of everyone. So welcome to bring in the mind. This power mapping is very useful. It's very practical, and it can give you two outcomes in terms of one, that you learn the tool. So it's okay if you don't want to present a case, but you can learn from the process of doing, because the idea is that you master the piece, so you can also replicate it in your organization or with your stakeholders. So the first thing is that you learn how to do it in a practical way. And the second thing is, if you are needing right now a power mapping and you want to bring this output, this is the space to do it. So you can bring information, real information, also with other people from around the world that can help you actually to see and make the questions. So it's no problem that the participants are from different organizations, because actually that brings a very nice things that sometimes you don't see. But when you bring someone else from a different country, of a different reality that is related with food, believe me, it helps a lot to bring you. So if you want to propose a topic, you want to put it over the table, go ahead. I don't know, the people that already present the cases, if you want to propose your topics, and then we're gonna organize the things. Okay, I can see Laura, maybe you can connect on the 23rd. Okay. Yeah, you can connect on the 21st maybe, and then we can continue, but we will need someone that maybe to continue the process, because you're the one who's gonna know the project. So that's the issue. Minbui, okay, hello everyone. My name is Minbui. You are from the European. Hello, colleague, Vietnam. I'm currently working on farmer field schools. That's very interesting. And climate resilient agriculture. Don't worry, you don't have to be a member of FOLUR, but to be here. Perfect. So Minhun, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing, I hope I'm pronouncing well your name. So you would like to propose the topic of farmer field schools. I love it. I want to be in your team. Nice. Great. Someone else, and yeah, I'm sorry about the day, but if you can do it, Laura, let's see. If not, we can advance on the 21st with someone with the work that you have done on the 21st, and do as much. Anyone wants to propose another topic? Great. So we will see each other on the 21st, and we already have 2 topics here. And the 21st, if someone else wants to propose, actually, if you want to bring someone else from your team to that session, you are welcome, because we can divide it in groups and do it in that way. And that day, we're gonna start working on this and different projects. So I see Kim Suri is also interested in the topic with Minhu. Perfect. We're gonna group in us, so we're gonna have a time before the session to do this. So before we finish and we go, I just want to ask you the last thing, and is if you can get to the Mentimeter, so you can use your phone and use your camera to scan the code. We want to evaluate the session. We want to have your feedback. Also, there is the link of the Mentimeter, the code. So it will help us very much if you can give us, there are just 4 questions, very, very straightforward questions, but very enriching for us. Because yeah, we are here also for learn from you, and that's the, I hope everyone was able to access to the Mentimeter. Let me okay, let me know if you were able to access. Okay, yeah, Kim Sura, I see you say yes. Let's see who else. Perfect, great. Asmar, you access, Laura, Silvia, perfect. Modeste, August, you've been very quiet. Really want to hear your voice in the next session. And I want to know about
Sorry, yeah.
yeah. And Bimbu, but thank you. I'm love to know also what you're doing. Elizabeth, it's been a while since I don't see you. So nice to see you here. And Ibrahim, also to see you. Asma, I love your case. So it will be nice to elaborate on that as well if you want. So if you want to bring someone from your team, welcome to the session of the power mapping. Right. So this is it. I'm gonna stop sharing. I hope you will access the link. You deforestation regulation law. Wow, that would be a nice one. That would be a very nice one, and we have a lot of topics to share of that on that. Well, this is fantastic. So we're gonna take the most of the time on the next session and also share the experience. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining today. We will see you next Wednesday, and have a nice day and a powerful afternoon, morning, or the best, and see you next Wednesday. Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.